Good to have you with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. This year, 2015, I think is going to be remembered as a year where protests and minorities who are fighting for social justice and their clashes with police have just gone absolutely overboard. There are two cities in the spotlight right now, and that's Chicago and also Minneapolis. In Chicago, a police officer, Jason Van Dyke, 37 years old, has been arrested and brought up on first-degree murder charges for the killing of Laquan McDonald, and this was a year ago. This police video, the dash cam, was released, and of course, residents are furious because it shows him being shot 16 times. This is Police Chief Jerry McCarthy talking about last night's incident.
Do people have a right to be angry? People have a right to protest. People have a right to free speech, but they do not have a right to commit criminal acts. And at the end of the day, the Chicago Police Department is trained for, and we're one of the world leaders in mass demonstrations. We're prepared to facilitate people's First Amendment right to free speech, but we will be intolerant of criminal behavior here in the city of Chicago. And we expect that we're going to have community support to facilitate whatever protests come our way. And I'm really confident in the community as far as being behind us.
It all sounds good, but the videotape is ominous, and the actions in the street and the unrest that's taking place has to be addressed. And their issues have to be addressed. I go back to this. I go back to education. I think when you're picking and choosing neighborhoods, when you're shutting down schools of low-income neighborhoods, it sends a real message. And that's where the unrest in the heart and the soul begins. And it changes a community. And everything is intensified and everything comes under the microscope. And who knows where it's going to end, but cooler heads must prevail and issues must be addressed. For more on this, I want to turn to my great friend, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, who's a professor at Georgetown University. Also, he's author, contributing opinion writer for the New York Times. Michael, good to have you with us.
Ed, always good to be on with you, my friend.
How do we throw cold water on this? What is the issue here? We've also got Minneapolis burning with unrest as well, and we'll get to that in a moment. But what's happening here, and what's the remedy, Doctor?
Well, you just made a brilliant point about linking all of these things together. Neighborhoods that are demoralized, that are, seen as something that's disposable, get that message and they internalize that, Ed. And on top of that, when the police chief says we are intolerant of crime, he means of everyone except perhaps his own police force, because this young man was mowed down in cold blood. The fact is, I wish the police would finally say, he did say that people have a right to be angry and the like, but we are intolerant of. Start with your own police force. Say we are intolerant of this kind of behavior that appears to be morally reprehensible, and we will begin there. And then we will also demand the same thing of the citizens of this particular city. It seems to me that the police are intolerant of the no-snitch policy among citizens in this country, and yet they are tolerant of no snitching among themselves for a year. This video was held in safekeeping. The police who saw that knew what happened, and yet they came with the same narrative they've always had. I was afraid of my life. This young man didn't cooperate with the police, and as a result of that, we had to kill him. The black people in Chicago and across this country have very little faith in the ability of the police to exercise their justly sworn duties to uphold the law, to protect, and to serve. And as a result of that, you see this kind of carnage going on and the kind of social protest that overflows where the anger of the people it engulfs communities. And those legitimate rights, as the police captain said, chief said, and I'm glad he said it, to protest sometimes then transmogrifies and gets real nasty in terms of the lethal intensity of what the people feel. So you said something brilliant here. Let's talk about education of the police department and of the broader citizenry. Let's talk about the economic and social injustice that they confront. Let's talk about warehousing people so that they become, you send them to detention as opposed to trying to figure out what their problems are, and then they go to jail.
I just think, Doctor, that the eroding of society, the eroding of opportunities, The absolute choosing and picking of neighborhoods of who gets resources and who doesn't based on property tax is the birthplace of all of this crap that's going on.
Well,
now,
there's no doubt about that. And then when people are, in these densely populated areas where little resources are to be had, then you see a predictable outcome of heightened crime and a predictable outcome of the inability of the police to really use community policing to deal with these neighborhoods. Community policing, Ed, has been proved to work far better than bringing in people who have no relationship to a particular community to police it.
In the city of Minneapolis, there has also been a shooting and a death, and there have been multiple protests in recent days. Misty Noor is a spokesperson for Black Lives Matter in Minneapolis. She calls the shootings on Monday evening a planned hate crime. Here it is.
What happened last night was a planned hate crime and an act of terrorism against activists who have been occupying the 4th Precinct to demand justice for Jamar Clark, a black man shot and killed by the Minneapolis Police Department. Despite earlier statements from police about the impending threat from white supremacists, the police instead maced citizen journalists and peaceful protesters. They made disparaging comments to those at the protests instead of taking the threat seriously. We reiterate that we have zero faith in this police department's desire to keep our community safe.
It's almost a science right now on how to handle crowds after a police shooting. This is new territory for America, but it's commonplace. Put it together for us, Doctor.
No doubt. I mean, the young lady spoke eloquently there about the fact that if you've been informed that these people who are white supremacists are going to be in the neighborhood to cause a stir, yes, again, we have first right amendments of people to peacefully assemble, but you also have to be aware of the potential for violence that comes not only from the people who are gathered, but from those people who seek to interrupt the duly, the rightful right to protest. So I think, first of all, we've got to acknowledge that. Secondly, you said something important there again. We've developed this science of dealing with crowds that gather to protest their right. And so, again, what we have to see is that, on the one hand, we got to balance our ability and our need and our right to say what is going on is wrong, is problematic, and must be addressed. And on the other hand, obviously, communities are concerned about safety and the like. But when you spoke earlier about these same factors being there, lack of resources, lack of public attention, the refusal to acknowledge that what's going on here is wrong. It's like what happened in Katrina, Ed, when we said then, over 10 years ago, that if this had happened in a whiter, richer neighborhood, this kind of thing would not have been tolerated for citizens to be left behind. Well, it wouldn't be tolerated for this kind of occupation by a police force in cities where the real justice is arrest the people who do the wrong. That's undeniable. At the same time, treat people with human decency and respect. And when we have images like the one in Chicago where the young man is basically shot down in cold blood, and in Minneapolis where, again, peaceful protesters are being assaulted by gun-wielding white supremacists, we have a problem in this country, and we have got to confront it directly and head-on so that we can balance the need for safety and security of all with the demand for the rightful place to protest the injustice that occurs.
Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, always great to visit. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it very much. We'll do it again.
Love you, my friend. Thank you.
All right. Always great with us. Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, opinion writer for the New York Times and also political analyst for MSNBC and professor at Georgetown. This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary, brought to you by Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team. Have a great Thanksgiving. We're going to take a few days off. We'll be back with you on Monday morning.